Welcome to story time. It's been a while. If you're listening and you're in Latin too, it's been a while since we talked about Aeneas. We took a break to do a major unit on the heroes. And if you're in Latin 1, well, we're just picking up where we left off with the last video. So, Miss Leonard's classes, Latin 2 classes, welcome. I'm Mr. Allen. Hello. Story time is something that is a lot of fun, I think, in class, and it's a little bit harder to do with videos, but we're trying our best. And remember that story time is the history of the Romans as told by the Romans, but then as interpreted by me and also Ms. Leonard. So Ms. Leonard stresses some things and I stress other things, and that's okay. And we both have different interpretations and we have varying stories, different versions of the stories. So just know that when we meet back face to face, if you ask Miss Leonard something, she might be like, well, that's not exactly the way I would tell it. And that's okay. Just listen to her. Okay, so anyway, if you guys recall, Aeneas was in Carthage and he acted like a total jerk to Queen Dido, and Dido ended up taking her own life very tragically, and Aeneas just sails away in the background. Now, if you'll recall, Aeneas is destined to found a civilization in an area called Latium, which is in central Italy. But his father Anchises, when Anchises had died in Sicily, his father had told him in a dream, hey, before you go to Latium, I need you to come to the area that's really close to the Bay of Naples, modern-day Bay of Naples, and it's near Mount Vesuvius, and there's this lake there called Lake Avernus, Avernus, and underneath that lake is a cave system, and it will lead actually to the underworld. I need you to come see me. I got something to show you. So Aeneas, being a good son, does exactly what he's told, and he goes to see a prophetess named the Sibyl, Sibyl, the Sibyl is going to be his guide through the underworld. By the way, when you go to Italy and you go down to that area, you can still see the Sibyl's caves, which are also supposedly the entrance to the underworld. It's pretty awesome. I mean, look at that. Very awesome. Anyway, so she takes him down to the underworld. They have all kinds of underworld adventures. There is the Sibyl, by the way. Yes, that's a woman. It's a painting by Michelangelo on the Sistine Chapel ceiling in Vatican City. You can see right there Cumae, so that's the Sibyl of Cumae. A Sibyl is just a prophetess in general. And anyway, this particular Sibyl, there she is standing right over there. She takes Aeneas down to the underworld. They see all kinds of interesting and crazy things. You guys should definitely read Book 6 of Virgil's Aeneid at some point. Just read an English translation, and you'll see all of the crazy folks and creatures that he encounters in the underworld. At one point, side note, he is walking in the underworld and he is heading towards the place, towards the Elysian Fields, which is where all the good souls are. And right before he gets to the Elysian Fields, there's this one area of people who are really good but took their own lives. And who does he see but the ghost of Queen Dido? And he goes up to her, and at this point, he feels extreme remorse, and he starts crying, and he's like, oh, please forgive me, I did what I had to do, I was destined, the gods made me do it, I didn't want to, etc., etc., etc. And Queen Dido looks at him, and simply turns her back and walks away, doesn't even say a word, and then goes over to the ghost of her first husband, the one whom her brother had murdered, and he puts his arms around her and gives Aeneas a eat crap and die look, and then Aeneas cries and walks away. Anyway, so eventually the Sibyl helps Aeneas find the ghost of his father, Anchises, and here's what Anchises has to say to Aeneas. He says this, look, you had a 10-year-long war in Troy, and then 7 years wandering around the Mediterranean. I'm not going to lie to you. You got about a year's worth of war left. But by God, it's going to be worth it. If you just continue and you persevere with you and your men and you defeat your enemies, let me show you the town that you found, its descendants will do great things. And what does he do? Anchises shows him a future image of a city, of course, that we know of as Rome, and all of its glory and the buildings, the architecture, and he shows him all of the famous future Romans who are going to bring glory to this civilization. And so Aeneas feels really inspired by this image, and he exits the underworld with even more zeal to go and found his new town. So he tells his men all about what he saw, and he inspires them, and they get on the boats and they sail north, and they finally come to the area of Latium, which is that, again, region of central Italy where he's destined to build a city. Now, the issue, though, is that, most of that area is sort of already occupied, or at least it's owned by a king, and the king's name is Latinus. Now, King Latinus has a daughter named Lavinia, so she's another important person in this whole story. And I want you to know this name too, Turnus, who's the king of a group of people called the Rutulians, and we'll talk more about them in just a minute. But first to King Latinus. So Aeneas shows up at Latium, and he seeks an audience with King Latinus. Latinus grants him the audience, and here we are, boom, audience granted. And Aeneas says, listen, I know you own a whole bunch of land here, but I was wondering if you could possibly give me a little bit of it, because I would really want to found a city. I'm kind of destined to do that. There's a specific place where I'm supposed to do it. I'm supposed to find a mother pig nursing 30 piglets underneath a tree, and that's where I'm supposed to build a city. Now, King Latinus, understandably, is like, yeah, buddy, you could stay here as long as you want, but you can't have my land. Well, at that exact moment, his daughter Lavinia's hair catches on fire. And everybody turns and they look and they're like, what? And Lavinia herself is aware that her hair is on fire, and she's like, what's going on? And then the fire goes out and she's completely unharmed. And then Latinus looks at Lavinia and then looks back at Aeneas and is like, you know what? Well, maybe we can work something out. Sure. I give you some land. We'll talk more about the details later. Now, the hair catching on fire had an effect, though, on Lavinia and Aeneas. It made them look at one another and fall in love, legitimately in love. Not like Dido obsessively in love with Aeneas, while Aeneas is like, yeah, I'm liking this, but not really. No, this is like true love, okay? And so they start hanging out quite a bit and flirting, etc., while Aeneas is staying in the palace as the special guests of Latinus, and he and Latinus are talking about what exactly, Aeneas's future city is going to look like, etc. Well, word gets back to a man named Turnus, who's the king of the Rutulians. Now, Turnus is like a redneck king. The Rutulians are kind of a rough mountain people. And because, hey, we're in the south, I'm going to use an accent here. And so word gets back to Turnus. And here's the deal. Turnus is actually engaged to Lavinia. And he goes to King Latinus, and he says, what's the deal, man? What's the deal with this guy, this newcomer, this foreigner named Aeneas coming in here? He's flirting with my girl. That's my girl. Come on. Can't have that. And Latinus is like, oh, come on, Turnus, you have nothing to worry about. The engagement is still going to go on as planned. But Turnus, he's not happy. And he's got some spies kind of watching out and looking at Aeneas in this whole situation. So tensions are already high. Now, one morning, Ascanius, who, by the way, this is the son of Aeneas. Ascanius, the son of Aeneas, is about 12 years old now. And he goes outside one morning with some of his friends, and they decide to go hunting. And here they are. They're on the bank of a river. That's the Tiber River, by the way. And they're on this bank of this river, and they see a deer on the other side. And Ascanius is like, oh, this is it. And he pulls back the bow, lets the arrow go, poosh, hits the deer and kills it. But this is not just any deer. Oh no, this is a deer that is special and sacred to none other than Turnus, the redneck king. And when Turnus finds out, he gets really mad, and he gathers his army together, and he tells King Latinus, those people shot my deer! They killed my deer! I'm gonna kill you! And they start a massive war. Now, King Latinus, he and his men are kind of caught in the middle. This is really a fight between Turnus and the Rutulians on the one hand, and then Aeneas and the Trojans on the other. And Latinus is like, this is crazy. You guys, please, stop fighting. This is nuts. Now, the fighting goes on for about a year, and neither side is really getting an upper hand over the other. It's pretty much just a straight-up stalemate. Well, finally, there's this one battle where it just so happens that Aeneas and Turnus end up fighting one-on-one in the middle of the battlefield. And everybody else just sort of stops fighting at that point. And they gather around. And the idea is pretty much, whoever wins this one-on-one fight, that's the side that's going to win, whether or not it's Aeneas and the Trojans or Turnus, the Redneck King, and the Rutulians. And so they start fighting, and at one point, Aeneas, with some awesome swordplay, is able to fling Turnus' sword way far away from him. And then Turnus has no choice but to throw down his shield, and he turns his back and starts running. But it's strategic running. He's running to try and tire Aeneas out. He's running because he sees a massive boulder ahead, and he thinks, if I can just get to that boulder in time, lift it up, and turn around, Aeneas will be too far away to hit me with his sword, but not far enough away to get by this massive boulder that I'm going to throw on him. Turnus has like near superhuman strength. And so Turnus sees the rock. His plan goes just perfectly. He picks up the big rock, he turns around, and Aeneas immediately stops. He's too far away to stab. 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 But he's too close to run away and be unharmed. And Turnus is holding this massive boulder over his shoulders, and he says, "This is for my girl and my dear." But his knees start buckling. This boulder is super heavy, and he tries to heave the boulder at Aeneas with all his might. But the boulder only goes like 2 or 3 feet in front of him. Boom! Comes to a stop. And he's like, "Oh crap!" And Aeneas goes and runs and tackles him. And boom! Finally we have this scene where here is Turnus laid low. And there's Aeneas standing above him. And Aeneas has his sword and whoosh, kills Turnus. Defeats the Rutulians. And shortly afterwards, he finds, as he's walking, a pig under a tree, nursing 30 piglets. And he says to King Latinus, "This is where I'd like to build my kingdom." And King Latinus says, "Sure. And while you're at it, do you want to marry my daughter?" And Aeneas says, "I would like nothing more." And so Aeneas and Lavinia get married, and they build a new city. And then the question is, what's the name of the city? It's not Rome. Not yet. The name of the city, well, Aeneas names it after his new wife. He calls it Lavinium, where he rules there as a just king for 3 years before dying peacefully in his sleep of old age. So where's Rome in all this? Well, next time on Storytime, we get to 2 twin boys, descended, of course, from Aeneas himself, named Romulus and Remus. Stay tuned.